Greetings, my friends. Our pop culture is under assault by corporations who would rather destroy our cultural heritage than build respectfully upon it. As more and more of our treasured modern myths are revised and rebooted beyond all recognition, debates are springing up everywhere centered around one question. What is canon? Who decides what canon is, and why does it matter? To decisively address these questions, Doomcock now presents his 3 laws of canon. Canon is chronological. Anything that contradicts a previously established fact is not canon. It's that simple. Whatever was established by the original creator of the universe in question is canon, and anything subsequently created that violates the previously established facts of that universe is not canon. Let's examine what this means in concrete terms. Gene Roddenberry created the Star Trek universe. He did not do it alone. In actual creative terms, I consider Gene L. Kuhn, D.C. Fontana, and Robert Justman to be as creatively important as Roddenberry, if not more so. Yet all of their contributions to Star Trek were under Roddenberry's supervision and ultimate authority, and therefore, for moral purposes, I consider Roddenberry to be the creator of Star Trek. In a similar way, I consider George Lucas to be the creator of Star Wars, but let's stick with Star Trek for now. Canon is historical fact. Pop culture, for better or worse, represents our common lingua franca. These stories serve as cultural anchors that steady us, a mythology that we as a community share, reference points that bind us together. One need only say, "Peace, live long and prosper," to gain a smile from a brother or sister. One need only utter, "May the Force be with you," to elicit solemn nods from those in the room who are of our tribe. So say we all. Utter those words, and those in the know will get a gleam in their eyes, remembering Adama's heroic stand to save humanity. These are the stories that traditionally got passed down from generation to generation as tales of old around a campfire. As such, they matter. Beyond commerce, beyond legality, these stories belong to all of us because they are lodged in our hearts, and they make up the fabric of our dreams. When you attack them, you attack our culture, you attack our dreams, you attack us. That is why canon matters, because canon is the very foundation of these modern myths. To abandon them is to abandon our history, our culture, and our tribe. It is too important a question to leave unaddressed on the floor. And so, Doomcock takes it up now. There is a slander against those of us who guard the integrity of our modern myths. An idea that we are haters, that we are nitpickers, that we are foolish and obsolete. And nothing could be further from the truth. We are guardians of mythology, champions of history, keepers of the flame. It may seem trivial to our critics, the flaws we point out in modern shows that callously disregard canon, yet these critics are invariably newcomers to these myths, and so they don't care about history. They are not of our tribe. They are not initiates. They have no access to our lore. They are not privy to our secret knowledge, the hidden language of our dreams. Their dismissal of our objections is shallow and intellectually stunted, arising from a place of ignorance. They are the haters. The facts are on our side. Roddenberry established canon for Star Trek and Star Trek: The Next Generation. Anything that violates that canon cannot be true. For example, the Romulan cloaking device. The first time such a device was encountered was in Balance of Terror. Kirk was the first captain ever to deal with such a technology. To deny this is to devalue the integrity of Star Trek and to force ourselves to abandon the very idea of history. If we allow Star Trek Discovery to claim that it was in fact Klingorks, themselves a violation of canon in every respect, who developed cloaking technology 10 years before Star Trek, then we destroy the suspension of disbelief that makes these myths live. If nothing about these fictions can be thought of as true, if even their established history is malleable, then they are lessened in stature even to the point of irrelevance. It's like being told how a magic trick works. Once you see that, the magic is gone. Similarly, for our myths to thrive, we must believe in them. We must believe in them. And how can we believe in these myths when they change according to the whims of those in power, the franchise owners who purchase the rights? Is that all there is to canon? If so, then these stories are reduced from myth to corporate product. They too lose any magic they had, and we as true fans can no longer take them seriously if those in charge of making them exhibit such contempt for them. So when the idiots mangling Star Trek write something so stupid, it's not merely offensive. It's an existential threat to the integrity, the intellectual soundness of Star Trek, to anyone who understands what Star Trek is, because it threatens the very foundation of our pop cultural dreams. People have debated me online, pointing out that the Suliban had stealth technology in Enterprise, to which I reply, then Enterprise was not canon. Again, Roddenberry had nothing to do with Enterprise. Star Trek came first, and for any subsequent Trek series to be taken seriously, it must adhere to canon. Consider the alternative. If legal ownership of the franchise trumps the creative element, then what is to stop the owners of a franchise from purchasing Green Acres and marrying it to Star Trek? Or to purchase Gilligan's Island and marrying that to Star Wars? Need I spell out how innately offensive such an idea is? Need I point out how absurd, how ridiculous, and how destructive that would be to something as precious as our shared mythology? Because it is so absurd. It proves that canon must be transmitted from the original creator down the line. It cannot be retrofitted by those who purchase the property subsequently. To do that is to place us at the mercy of people who may have no understanding of what that mythology is. Canon must adhere to the creator's vision. Otherwise, anything is possible, and the timeline is completely malleable to the point of being pounded out of existence. Again, Roddenberry had nothing to do with Enterprise. Star Trek came first, and for any subsequent Trek series to be taken seriously, it must adhere to canon. Which leads us to the second law of canon. Canon may only be revised or discarded by the original creator, not by his heirs or assigns. Anything posited by Roddenberry is canon. Rick Berman is free to make new installments of Star Trek, only insofar as they don't violate what came before. That's why it's generally a better idea to create shows that move forward in time, rather than prequels. But that said, even in sequels, if facts are presented that contradict canon, or the tone of the series veers violently away from the established tone, then that can be considered a violation of canon as well. Violations of canon come in two forms: actual and moral. Star Trek has been violated in both ways. In terms of actual canon, all the historical details of Star Trek Discovery are wrong, factually incorrect. But perhaps even more egregiously, Star Trek Discovery morally violates Star Trek canon by perverting the tone of Star Trek. The Star Trek Discovery universe is a dark, ugly, stupid universe, filled with repellent characters, idiotic plot holes, and cynicism. These values are diametrically opposed to Roddenberry's vision of Star Trek, which was built on a foundation of optimism, rationality, and morality. Star Trek Discovery, therefore, is so wildly opposed to Star Trek canon as to be hostile to Star Trek, an insult to fans who have loved Star Trek for over 50 years, and a fatal blow to this mythology. Shallow fans, newly drawn to Star Trek Discovery by its ugly violence and naked cynicism, don't give a damn about the fact that it's a stake through the heart of Star Trek. As such, their pseudo-fandom and their criticism of legitimate fans is laughable, contemptible, and easily dismissed as the empty noise that it is. They claim to be the true fans of Star Trek, which is impossible given that they have no idea what Star Trek is. Indeed, even those who watched the previous Star Trek series who enjoy Star Trek Discovery cannot be properly said to be fans, as they have completely misunderstood what Star Trek represented, according to Gene Roddenberry, its creator. Therefore, Star Trek Discovery violates canon in giving cloaking technology to early Klingons 10 years before Kirk's Enterprise. It violates canon and credulity by idiotically introducing a spore drive that is fantasy-based, since pixie dust is not science, and far superior to the warp drive established in Star Trek. Being able to instantaneously transport yourself around the universe of a network of spores is a massive violation of not only canon, but good taste. It turns Star Trek from science fiction into science fantasy, with space whales and space pirates and sonar that works in space. It is appalling, not only in its blatant sodomization of canon, but in its violation of taste and intelligence. Similarly, the idea that Discovery has holodeck technology over 100 years earlier than the Enterprise D is a cringe-worthy assault on canon that is absolutely incompatible with Star Trek. Now, fans have pointed out that in the second season of Star Trek, the animated series, a holodeck was introduced on the Enterprise. This is so. It was done by Roddenberry, and yet Roddenberry disavowed the animated series as not canon. The creator himself declared the animated series not to be canon, and therefore it is not. But even if it were, it would be compatible with Star Trek to say that the holodeck technology did not exist prior to year 5 of the Enterprise's mission. That simply means it was an early version of the holodeck we saw installed on the Enterprise, which was more advanced in Star Trek: The Next Generation. But saying that Discovery had a fully functional holodeck 10 years before the Enterprise and 100 years before the Enterprise D displays a callous and reckless disregard for Star Trek and for its fans. The galling thing about these violations is they're not necessary. Any of these stories could be revised by talented writers to tell their stories while conforming to canon. That they don't is a testament to the ugly arrogance of the hacks in charge and to their complete lack of anything resembling talent. In similar fashion, the violation of canon in Star Wars is moral in nature as well, though not actual in concrete terms. Because the prequels were created by George Lucas, like them or not, they are canon. Lucas did not explicitly violate anything he established in the original trilogy. Therefore, like it or not, midichlorians generate the Force. Anakin said yippee and no, and Jar Jar existed. These facts cannot be disputed. Now, if Lucas had tried to maintain in The Phantom Menace that the Force is generated by nanobots that the Jedi Order inject people with, would absolutely be a violation of canon, except that Lucas himself said it was so. A creator must be allowed to revise his creation at will. It might ruin the property, yes. It might make that myth unworthy, and we might subsequently abandon it, but it would be canon. It would mean that Yoda and Obi-Wan were lying in the original trilogy. The Force is not a field created by all living things. It's nanotech created by science. But fortunately, Lucas didn't go there. We may not like his decisions in the prequel trilogy, but they are canon. However, if Jar Jar Abrams or Ryan Roundhead tried to corrupt Star Wars with his scandalous secret of the Jedi, it would not be canon. Why? Because the legal right to monkey with a franchise is superseded by the moral right of the original creator not to have his work adulterated, and the moral right of fans not to have their shared cultural heritage discarded for mere corporate profit. Which leads us to the third law. The moral right of canon supersedes the legal right of intellectual property. Doomcock declares these stories to be the modern equivalents of classical myths, a treasured part of our cultural heritage. They therefore have an intrinsic value beyond mere commerce and deserve to be preserved and protected. There is a moral right to preserve our shared culture that trumps legal title. In other words, the ramification of changes to our shared cultural experience are so grave, so antithetical to our common frame of cultural reference, that we cannot and will not allow corporations to employ vandals to rewrite, mutilate, discard, and distort our shared memories and cultural references whenever those memories and references become less profitable. It would be the ultimate triumph of commerce over culture to allow this to happen, an inherent surrender of any notion that our modern mythologies are anything more than disposable commodities. Disney, CBS, your artless and cynical attempts to completely discard the past in order to appeal to newer, potentially more profitable markets are callous, short-sighted, lazy, and evil. In saying our dreams are disposable, you say that we are disposable. We are not. Indeed, as the manufacturer of dreams in the form of films and TV shows, you expose yourselves to liability for selling us defective products. When we paid for them, we were not told our dreams came with expiration dates. That is not to say that the holders of legal title to an intellectual property are without rights. The subsequent owners of an intellectual property may authoritatively establish new canon moving forward in time, or establish new canon in the distant past, only insofar as the new canon does not violate established canon. This is not onerous or restrictive. All they have to do is write stories that don't alienate half their fan base. But for some reason, not offending their loyal fans seems to be a concept increasingly foreign to Hollywood. Doomcock is at war with those who would destroy pop culture. There's a particularly idiotic talking point popular among intellectually bankrupt cretins that claims you can't be a true fan of a franchise unless you swallow every bit of swill they hand you, regardless of its quality or lack thereof. Doomcock knows you're not a true fan if you mindlessly accept any garbage these corporations toss in your trough, if you have so little awareness of our respect for the lore that came before you. You're not a fan. You're just a consumer. True fans watch films and guard the flame of canon because that flame is a precious part of our shared cultural experience. Consumers aren't concerned with art. They're merely a perfect new breed of corporate asset, bred to thoughtlessly devour whatever product gets slipped into their cages. Is it any wonder the corporations are so eager to defend their perfect new crop of pod fans, the culmination of their dream to produce a non-discriminating batch of consumers so mindlessly brand loyal they will gobble down any chum dumped in their tank and attack anyone who recognizes their Soylent Green is made out of people's dreams. There is a culture war going on. Disney, CBS, and companies like them are not only subverting canon for profit, they are waging war on true fans with zombie armies of pseudopod fans, mindlessly loyal to brand names instead of ideas, even creating false flag websites in an attempt to smear actual fans like me, fans like you, as racists and sexists and fascists, all because we love the stories they're destroying. Very well then. Doomcock will not shy away from this battle. I have laid down my laws of canon. I have explained why our modern myths are so important. I deliver this to you as a shield and as a weapon. Join me in my fight to preserve pop culture. Spread this video far and wide. Use its clarity and logic to rebut the lies of pod fans, to demonstrate that in this culture war, we defenders of culture are not racists or bigots. Our resistance is intellectual and springs from a recognition of the value of myths in culture, a value that must supersede the rapacious desire for mere profit. Good writers can advance new stories that build on old stories without tearing them down. Cobra Kai proved that brilliantly. It can be done artfully, with love, by people with talent. But these corporations are just lazy. They don't give a damn about art. They just want to take a sledgehammer to the past, rip up the foundation, and put a cheap prefab up on the site, which itself will be torn down in 15 years with another prefab and another and another. And that's the future they want. A future where fans do not own their dreams. They merely rent them. We are at war. It is a war of ideas and ideals. A Doomcock has the certain key to victory. Doomcock realizes the power is ours if we will only seize it. All we have to do to win is stay home. That's all we have to do. Say no to their trash. Many of us said no to Solo, and look what happened. Disney is reeling. Kennedy is on her way out. They're panicking. They're trying to smear us as racists, as sexists. In short, now they are feeling our wrath. We are winning, and all we have to do to win is say no. Without us, without the fans that have supported them for 50 years, their profits wither. They know it, and they're terrified that we will figure it out. And so they're reacting with rage and panic. Good. Let them feel our wrath till, defeated, they slink back to us and offer us what we deserved all along: respect and quality. That's all we ask, and it's what we must now demand. Canon is not a commodity. It is history. History, being rewritten by the powerful, is tyranny. Look to your history and do not be deceived. Doomcock is fighting for our history. Will you join him?